What does it take for the most powerful man on earth to be genuinely frightening? Not because of their enemies or their weapons or their wars, but because of what is happening inside their head. That is the question we are asking today about Donald J. Trump, the 45th and the 47th president of the United States of America.
In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups: the police who investigate crime and the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. This is the story of Donald Trump. His entire life, Trump has believed he's above the law, that no one would ever dare hold him accountable. He lies, he rips off workers, he sexually abuses women.
Hey, when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
We are not diagnosing anyone here. We are not psychiatrists, but we are people with eyes. And what those eyes have witnessed over the years throughout the political career of Donald Trump has led many healthcare professionals, mental health professionals, world leaders, and even everyday common person to ask the same uncomfortable question: is this man mentally stable enough to lead the free world? We are going to look at two specific lenses through which his behavior has been examined. Number one, psychopathy, a pattern of manipulative behavior, remorseless and self-serving behavior. And number two, mental instability, erratic, paranoid, dissociative behavior. Now I'm going to give you 10 examples which are well documented and which brings to the fore this person's psychopathic and mental instability. Number one, the Goldwater Rule Revolt.
Ever since 1973, there's been a rule, you could call it, with mental health professionals across the United States called the Goldwater Rule that basically prohibits mental health professionals from offering their diagnoses or really even their medical opinions on public officials that they have not personally seen for any kind of consultation.
27,000 plus mental health professionals sign a warning. What happened? In 2017, over 27,000 mental health professionals, therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists signed an open letter warning that Donald Trump showed dangerous signs of mental instability. This directly challenged the so-called Goldwater Rule, an ethical guide discouraging professionals from diagnosing public figures without examining them. The fact that so many experts were willing to break the protocol was in itself extraordinary. Yale psychiatrist Dr. Bandy Exley edited a best-selling book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, in which 37 narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial traits, and a dangerous inability to process reality. This was not a fringe group. These were licensed, credentialized, practicing clinicians. Now let us have a look at the psychopathy angle of this particular example. The antisocial personality disorder includes a persistent pattern of disregard for other people's rights, lack of remorse, and manipulative behavior. Multiple clinicians have identified these traits when observing Trump's behavior in public. Now let us look at the mental instability angle. The sheer scale of mental health experts who are signatories, which are almost 27,000 plus, reflects the degree to which behavior deviated from stable reality-based functioning. Example 2. The injecting bleach fiasco that played out
on April 23, 2020, during a nationally televised COVID-19 briefing, Trump stood at the podium and suggested in front of medical experts and the entire world that injecting disinfectant into the human body might be a treatment for the coronavirus. His exact words, delivered while gesturing toward a chart. And then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute. 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that? By injection inside or almost a cleaning? The Lysol Corporation immediately issued a public warning, urging people not to inject or ingest their products. Poison control centers reported a spike in calls. Medical professionals were left speechless. Trump later claimed he was being sarcastic. But the footage showed no trace of humor, sarcasm, or irony. He appeared entirely earnest.
Now let us look at the psychopathic angle in this particular example. The lack of remorse, the refusal to admit error, and the immediate pivot to it was sarcasm are textbook examples of psychopathic tendencies. To never accept responsibility even when there is the evidence in front of the camera. The instability angle. Suggesting people to inject bleach as a medicine is not a political position or a controversial opinion. It is a complete disconnect from basic reality. It points to either a profoundly reckless mind or one that is no longer operating within the normal cognitive guardrails. Example 3. I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue.
Sioux Center, Iowa. A small town became the stage for a provocative political statement. Donald Trump stood before a loyal crowd at Dordt College. The atmosphere was electric. I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters. Okay? It's like incredible. The crowd cheered. Trump laughed. This was a confident declaration of unwavering loyalty. The college president called it inappropriate. Critics were chilled, but followers felt the point. The Fifth Avenue scenario became a test for political immunity. Years later, this bond between Trump and his base remains a defining example of modern politics. A declaration that would echo through history long after the rally ended.
Now let's look at the psychopathy angle in this example. A hallmark of psychopathic personality is the belief of one's own immunity to consequences and a complete absence of empathy or remorse. That would make such a statement horrifying to say, and Trump said it with a smile. The mental instability angle in this example. The fact that Trump found this statement that he could commit murder without consequences worthy of a joke at a public rally reflects a startling absence of a moral compass most stable individuals possess. Example 4. The Sharpie Gate.
A new report found that U.S. agency leaders violated their own policy on scientific integrity after they backed a Trump tweet about Hurricane Dorian last year that was false. The controversy is now known as Sharpiegate. As Dorian bore down on the United States, Trump displayed a map from the NOAA that had been altered. A bubble traced in Sharpie markers showed Hurricane Dorian supposedly threatening the state of Alabama. The president had tweeted days earlier that Alabama would, quote, most likely be hit much harder than anticipated by Dorian. The claim was shot down within minutes by National Weather Service meteorologists in Alabama, who said the system would stay too far east. But Trump doubled down with his map in the Oval Office. Then the NOAA, which heads the NWS, later issued a statement which not only contradicted its own local office, but also stood by Trump's forecast. A memo released alongside Monday's report found that in backing Trump, NOAA leadership showed, quote, reckless disregard of the Code of Scientific Conduct and felt significant external pressure to do so.
Let's look at the psychopathy angle. The willingness to involve federal institutions, pressure officials, and potentially break federal law. Not to protect national security, but to protect his ego from a minor weather error, reflects the psychopathic prioritization of self-image above all else, including law and truth. Now let's have a look at the mental instability angle here. No mentally stable leader spends a week altering government documents and pressurizing federal agencies just because they got a hurricane path wrong in a tweet. The inability to simply say that I misspoke reflects a catastrophic fragility of ego. Example 5. The nuclear button tweet.
In another tweet, the president turns his attention back to North Korea, apparently responding to a New Year message from Kim Jong-un in which he said the country's nuclear weapons could reach anywhere in the US. Mr. Trump tweets, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un just stated that the nuclear button is on his desk at all times. Will someone from his depleted and food-starved regime please inform him that I too have a nuclear button, but it is a much bigger and more powerful one than his, and my button works. It marks a new tone, a new level of rhetoric in the nuclear crisis with North Korea. Peter Bowes, BBC News.
Now let's have a look at the psychopathy angle in this example. Taunting a nuclear-armed adversary via a tweet for the purpose of winning a social media engagement demonstrates a total lack of empathy for the millions of lives such a conflict would destroy. Core feature of psychopathic thinking. The mental instability angle. The inability to resist a childish competitive spirit, let's say, even so when the nuclear weapons are a subject, reflects an emotional regulation failure that experts associate with severe personality disturbances. Example 6. Praising his own response to his own press conference.
As the deaths from coronavirus continue to escalate, the president tweeted today about the television ratings of his White House briefings. CNN chief media correspondent Brian Stelter with us now. So, Brian, how does one digest that?
He is celebrating what he says is the popularity of the daily briefings that have been broadcast from the White House. Sometimes he comes out, treats them like rallies, makes misstatements that have to be cleaned up by his doctors. But these daily briefings have been...
Again, the psychopathic angle in this example. The complete inability to shift focus away from self, even in the face of a mass death event, is a defining feature of narcissistic psychopathy. The mental instability angle, the cognitive inability to engage meaningfully with a crisis that does not center himself, suggests disassociation, normal human behavior that mental health professionals classify as deeply concerning. Example 7. Very fine people on both sides.
You're putting what you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane.
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
Kill the person. Heather hired Charlottesville.
They showed up in Charlottesville to protest. Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as you. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Let's look at the psychopathy angle. The willingness to publicly defend, or at a minimum, equivocate about violent extremists in order to avoid alienating a political base demonstrates a remorseless calculation. That is what people describe as a psychopathic political behavior. Mental instability angle here. Any leader with a conscience or a common sense and moral grounding would not require days of staff intervention to correct statement about neo-Nazis. The initial instinct to defend both sides in the case of a white nationalist's murder reveals an internal moral compass that is dangerously misguided. Example 8. Watching the Capitol riot for hours and doing nothing.
Live on primetime TV, a hearing designed to convince America that over 3 critical hours, President Trump deliberately let violence unfold at the Capitol.
Donald Trump's conduct on January 6th was a supreme violation of his oath of office and a complete dereliction of his duty to our nation.
This is what he was prepared to ignore, hoping his supporters could overturn the election result, unmoved by the terror they were inflicting.
You may want to consider getting out and leaving now. Copy?
With the mob threatening to lynch the Vice President Mike Pence, his security team were desperate to get him out.
We have a clear shot if we move quickly.
The fear only too apparent in every voice.
So if we're going to leave, we need to do it now.
Officers whose job was to protect the Vice President fearing for their own lives too.
There were calls to say goodbye to family members, so on and so forth. It was getting, for whatever the reason was on the ground, the VP detail thought that this was about to get very ugly.
Let's look at the psychopathy angle here. Watching violence unfold, watching violence committed in your name, against your own government and directed against your own vice president, and choosing to do nothing for over 3 years while it continues, is perhaps the single most clinically striking example of the disregard for others' welfare that defines psychopathic behavior at the highest possible stakes. The mental instability angle here, the inability to address the problem of such a big magnitude, the paralysis, the detachment from consequences, the fixation on personal grievance over national security is consistent with acute emotional and psychological dysregulation. Example 9. The big lie. After losing the 2020 presidential elections to Joe Biden, Trump refused to concede.
Losing is never easy. Not for me, it's not.
And there it is. The first polls have closed. Counting is now well underway.
The Fox News Decision Desk is calling Arizona for Joe Biden. That is a big get.
This is a very big moment. This is a major fraud in our nation. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
This is an extremely flammable situation, and the president just threw a match into it.
Some of the most irresponsible comments that a president of the United States has ever made. He has cast doubt on the integrity of the entire electoral process purely for his own personal advantage.
Let's have a look at the psychopathy angle here. The big lie is a strategic, sustained deception maintained in the complete absence of any kind of evidence and in direct contradiction to rulings from his own appointees. This is a kind of psychopathic manipulation at the scale of an entire democracy, using the levers of government to perpetrate a fraud for personal and political gain, with zero remorse for the institutional damage caused. The mental instability angle in this example. the inability over years to accept objective reality, and the continuing disassociation from facts in the face of overwhelming counter-evidence, leads to what psychologists describe as a profound or fixed delusional framework. Example 10, suggesting termination of the Constitution.
In a latest post on his social network, Truth Social, he has gone even farther. Now hear this, he is calling for the Constitution to be terminated over the issue. Donald Trump wrote, and I'm quoting, "Do you throw the presidential election results of 2020 out and declare the rightful winner? Or do you have a new election? A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulation, and articles, even those found in the Constitution." His post came after Elon Musk retweeted a thread of tweets revealing internal documents about how the company handled a news article.
The psychopathy angle here. Proposing to terminate the constitutional democracy for personal power is the definitive expression of a psychopathic worldview. Rules are for other people. Laws, norms, documents, all are obstacles to be overcome when they stand between the psychopath and what they want. The mental instability angle here. The suggestion that a legal document, the Constitution, should be suspended reflects a total departure from any kind of reality and the dissolution of the boundary between personal grievance and national law that clinicians associate with severe personality and reality testing pathology. 10 examples, 10 documented, verified, on-the-record moments that form a pattern of remorselessness, a pattern of reality detachment, a pattern of placing personal ego above democratic institution, human life, and international stability. We want to be clear here. We are not using mental illness as an insult. Millions of people live with mental health conditions and pose no danger to anyone. The concern here is not the diagnosis. The concern here is the power. Because when a person who may lack empathy, who may be detached from reality, who may be incapable of accepting loss, when that person controls the world's largest nuclear arsenal, commands the world's most powerful military, and can reshape the global economic order with a single signature, the stakes are not personal, they are existential. The danger is not what he believes. The danger is what he can do. He has already suggested terminating the Constitution. He has already watched a violent insurrection on live TV and done nothing. He has already called upon foreign adversaries to attack NATO. He has already floated the idea of being dictator for a day. And every time, every single time, the people closest to him, the ones who have watched him up close, have come away and used the same words: dangerous, unfit, unstable. John Kelly, Rex Tillerson, John Bolton, Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chief of Staffs, the highest ranking military officer in America, reportedly told colleagues he is the most dangerous person he had ever met. These aren't political opponents. These are people who were in the room. So the question we started with, is Donald Trump a madman, is less important than the question we end with. What does it mean for the world for such an unstable psychopath to have power, and the power of the most powerful country in the world? In the meantime, subscribe to my channel. Please like and share.